Firstly, let's start from the beginning, as we do in every live. Why Stoicism for women? There's lots of male voices in this sphere. Why specifically for women? Well, let's have a look at the 4 phases which are seen to represent the development of the female experience. We've got 4 waves of feminism, metaphorical term used to describe distinct eras of feminist movements in the Western world. The first wave, legal and political equality. So this is often associated with the suffragettes from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century, early 20th century, and their motto was deeds, not words. There was a faction of this movement who sought to incite change through political encouragement and discussion, but the suffragettes were known for their physical stance that they took, proactive stance, I like to think of it, in order to get things done, in order to be seen, heard, acknowledged. Second wave, 1960s to 1980s, was addressing cultural and social inequality. We're talking about workplace discrimination, reproductive rights. The Abortion Act came along in 1968 and an Equal Pay Act of 1963. Obviously, there were legal loopholes, as there always are, but this is what happened during that phase. The third phase, 1990s to the 2000s, it continued to address these issues and emphasising individuality and challenging the gender norms. And then in the fourth wave, which began in 2010 and is leading right up to today, is characterised by the use of social media, the Me Too movement, greater focus on intersectionality. Intersectionality being the intersection between a person's sex, a person's culture, their race and so on. Obviously, all of these intersect to make the individual, to make up who you are, your identity. So this wave of feminism is promoting inclusivity. What was all that about? Well, all that was about was a backdrop to the need for acknowledgement. Each of those feminist waves had the same recurring theme, which was the need to be acknowledged as women. And my argument is, in order to command respect and be heard, because we want to be acknowledged, okay, for our strengths, what we bring to the table, we need to embody that self-respect first. We need to take account of all this history, of all the social developments, all the foundations that have been laid before us, that we've seen in the feminist sphere, with an understanding that it's our job to educate ourselves and build on those. Build on and move forward, both individually and collectively. And just to recap as to why the connection is made with the literary masters and Stoicism, is because there are a lot of voices out there in the Stoic sphere already, but we're reframing it by making an original connection in this podcast. What we're doing is we're saying, right, we're connecting literature, we're connecting Stoicism, and we're connecting women all together, and we are understanding that creates some kind of an original connection. There is no original thought, but there are original connections, and that is the USP of this podcast. It's original and relevant. Why? Because there's not enough focus of the steps women have taken, of the struggles they've had, and their achievements in the Stoic sphere. So that's what this is all about. In this podcast, we are combining the knowledge of literature, the achievements of the female literary masters, the Stoic philosophy that we use as tools to guide us, and we are incorporating that into our 21st century experience. We need to remember we are not just asking to be acknowledged by men. We are asking to be acknowledged by each other. We are just asking for representation in a human sphere, right? We're asking to be taken seriously in our own right, whether that be men or women. Neither sex holds more relevance than another. We are just creating this space where we are acknowledging that empowerment is important, understanding is important, and we are in this space where we want to understand more about ourselves as women and build on those foundations that have been laid by women before us. And it's important for us to remember that just as every relationship we have is transactional to a degree, why would our relationship with ourselves not be transactional too? We have to put in to get out. There is a transaction that needs to take place, even with ourselves. We have a duty to ourselves and our relationship. And that's actually, when you acknowledge that, understand that, and feel that deeply, that is when you take the step to invest. And that's what this podcast is about. That's what these lives are about. Choosing to invest in yourself. So if I come to you and I demand respect, if I demand to be heard, but I'm not respecting and hearing myself, then I'll be less inclined to get what I want. So to go back to the theme today, the Stoic Mother, as women, we have the ultimate power. We bring forth life into the world, or we have the potential to do so. We also nurture life that already exists in the world. We empower as Stoics by setting example that others might follow. The question I have today is, and we always have a question and we always have a journal task, so let's go on to the question. This is an anonymous question. I am a mother of an 11-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. I don't work all the time and I find myself continually alone with them, but sometimes I struggle because they're so different to me. And this, brackets, motherhood, is so different to what I thought it would be. I want them to be more like me with my outlook, but I don't want to be this helicopter mum that monitors everything they do. But they're just different and I don't know why. How do I come to terms with this? So today we are looking at Mrs. March. And Mrs. March, or Marmee as she is known in Louisa May Alcott's Little Women series, was quite a good example of a stable, secure mother who was always present, who led by example, and who had many challenges to boot. And that's the theme of today's live. As I said before, it is the Stoic Mother. So let's look at her role, and we're going to look, as I say every time, we're just going to think about our journals and what we've written in them and what we're adding to. We're going to look at how this relates to ourselves. Now, as I explained, it might not be that you're a mother yourself. It might be you are relating this question to your own experience with your mother. But again, to just tap back into the transactional idea, the idea that life is a transaction and we need to survive in order to be able to give in that relationship, in that maternal, or if you are the child in that relationship with your mother. We need to be accountable in some way, because a relationship is not just all take. And as the anonymous questioner said, I don't know how to come to terms with this. They're different to me. I don't want to be a helicopter mum, but I want them to do the things that I like to do, and I want them to be more similar to me. In our journal today, I'm going to read you out what I wrote in my journal. And this was just that 5-minute commitment that I speak about every time, which is a commitment to tap into ourselves for 5 minutes every day. And if we can, 5 minutes more in the evening. But wherever and whenever you feel you have the space to do that, it is something that is given to you. So we're talking about transactions here. You're putting in, you will gain something from that. My journal entry says, we must be faced with trials to test us and determine our character to find out what we are capable of. So we must be is different to we should be, is different to we can. We must be faced with trials to test us and determine our character. Every interaction, every relationship, no matter which way you're coming to that relationship, there must be trials. There must be tests. If we assume that it's all going to be plain sailing, there would actually be no relationship. There is no relationship without challenge, because a relationship is a transaction, is a meeting of two minds, two bodies, two entities with differing needs. And in order to continue that relationship, obviously, we need to provide something. Going back to today's question, the Stoic Mother, there are certain obligations we have as a mother. Or, indeed, our mother has. Today, with your journal, note down your trials. Note down what has been testing you and demanding that you find out what you're capable of. And it will be either with your mother or as a mother. It's important just to get that down on paper and look at it and relate that to yourself and what you are bringing to the relationship. It's important not just to relate that to how you feel about it. That is the first step, to write down how you feel about that. But it's important to acknowledge the part you have to play in that trial. And that's what I'm getting at today. To look at the relationship from a Stoic point of view, we have to understand that we are accountable for our part to play in that relationship. Now, you could say, well, that's not helping me very much. I have this problem. In this case of this question, I can't come to terms with how my children are different, so different to me, and whether that be a generational thing or with their attitudes or how they're behaving in the house. And you're not giving me the answers. And what I'm saying is, with Stoicism, the answers begin within yourself. Okay, so to recap, if we're looking at a question that is challenging us, the first port of call is us. That's how we come to difficulties. That's how we address problems as Stoics. We look at ourselves first of all. Because we understand that external forces are out of our control. We also understand as women that we have a certain, and parents, okay, and if we're looking at our parents themselves, there's a certain obligation there to fulfill certain roles. And what we do is we commit to fulfilling those roles because they represent our virtue, but how they are received, perceived, that's out of our control. We don't have any control on that at all. Now, Mrs. March is a mother of 4 girls, Meg, Jo, Beth and Amy. And if you've been listening to my Little Women tracks, you will know that they have a father who's a scholar and a minister, and he volunteered as a chaplain in the army during the American Civil War, leaving his wife and daughters to fend for themselves and plunging them into a degree of poverty. So he has helped friends, family friends. They couldn't repay the debt, and this has resulted in them being poor. Now, this is a direct reflection of Louisa M. Alcott's life, because her father did a very similar thing. So it's semi-autobiographical, this novel. So we've got this stalwart, we've got Mrs. March, and she is holding everything together, as these female protagonists do, and she's got these 4 daughters who have a very different outlook to her, especially Jo. And Jo wants to be a tomboy, and she cuts off all her hair, and she wants to be different to everybody else, and she doesn't want this expectation of just being a good little girl. And Mrs. March struggles with that. Her 4 daughters rely on her in times of despair, and she helps them. With open arms, a thankful heart, she is stable. She's there to listen to her girls' problems, and they know they can tell her anything. So her example is, she's not portrayed as somebody who's particularly notable for any huge achievement in the novel, but her example is stability. And Louisa M. Alcott herself was the stable influence in her family's life as a daughter. So her mother got ill. Her father was, well, I'll refer to that in a moment, but her father plunged Louisa's family into poverty, and she was the stable one. So what are we saying here? We're saying that you don't always have to be the loudest voice, the biggest smile, but to be stable is the key. And how do we do that? Unless we prevent the chaos coming in. And this is what Mrs. March is doing. There's a lot of chaos all the time. She remains stoic, and she understands some things are out of her control, and she just practices acceptance and understands that I'm going to have to be stable here. I'm going to have to be a stable influence, a virtuous influence, and I'm going to have to lead by example and hope things work out, because I know that is the only thing I can control. I can't control how that's perceived, and I can't control how that influences my children. All I can do is be that person. And that's the point. That's the point of today's live. Seneca said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and wastes today." The Stoic Mother understands that it is her example, her commitment to her virtue, that creates the stability. Her commitment to creating that pause, to avoid being reactive, so that she then can be the stable influence, the rock that her children depend upon. And she has to work at that every day. Being a mother myself of 2 children, I have to work at that every day. And sometimes my children made choices I haven't necessarily agreed with. But that's out of my control. What is within my control is how I react to that and what I bring to the party. Mrs. March was written into a difficult predicament. She had the conflicting demands of 4 children to juggle, and that demanded she lose the expectancy and deals with what she has to work with. And that's the way she chooses to navigate motherhood, rather than allowing those external forces to guide her, because they are ever changing. And her parents, this small town north of Boston was home to a great many writers of the day. Emerson, Hawthorne. They were neighbours to the Alcotts, and all of these writers were part of this movement called the Transcendentalist movement. And they believed one could find spirituality through nature and reason. They were optimists, and they believed humans were capable of great thoughts, and they advocated non-conformity, which is where she gets this character Jo, because actually Louisa M. Alcott was similar to Jo herself. But her father was not particularly responsible as a father or a husband, although he was an enthusiastic transcendentalist philosopher. He failed to provide enough money to support his family, though, and their poverty was so dire, in 20 years they moved 20 times. So Louisa's mother was in a position where she had to act as head of the household. And when Louisa grew older, she took on much of the financial burden. Then her sister died after a bout of scarlet fever, and her brother died in infancy. So she struggled with this expectation of how girls should behave in the 19th century. She was a tomboy, and this is reflected in her character, like Jo March. She wanted to go and fight when the Civil War broke out, and because she was against slavery. But because she couldn't join the military because she was a woman, she signed up to be a union nurse. So, how is this relevant? Well, she finds herself in a situation where she has to financially support the family. She therefore devoted her life to her parents and her sisters, and she understood that for women, if you have a family yourself at that time, you would lose out professionally. And obviously she needed to make money. And this is where Little Women comes in, because it dramatises this struggle between the desire to help one's family and the desire to help oneself. And Mrs. March, again, going back to that character, that motherly character, the Stoic mother understands this is what I must do. My husband is away. He's volunteered, not only as has he lent our friends money, they've not given it back. Now he's gone away to volunteer as a medic in the army. So that's leaving me in a predicament. What am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and cry about it and sulk about it? What I'm going to do is be proactive, and I am going to make something happen. And part of that will be to ensure that my children can themselves get little jobs in order to bring money into the family. She's pragmatic. And that's a huge part of Stoicism, is the pragmatism. And this is the advice that I've got for the questioner today, which is, you cannot change how you are perceived, but you can be responsible for what you do, what your actions are, and what you are prepared to do as a reflection of your own virtues and how you feel you should come to motherhood. It's very difficult. It's difficult. It's a struggle between being a good mother and being true to your own aspirations, to balance that up and realising, well, motherhood is not quite, it's an unknown. It's not quite what I thought it would be. And when we look at Little Women, this narrator, Louisa Alcott, she's not moralising too much. She's trying to allow us to draw our own lessons from this story. And the lesson I got from it was that Mrs. March is not featured too heavily, but she is the foundation that everything sits upon. She's that quiet pragmatism that is allowing everything to grow. She is the healthy soil in which the seeds are planted. And we have her second eldest daughter, Jo, who is that wild card. She's not quite predictable. She's not particularly like her mother. And she develops throughout the story. And of course, Mrs. March then is reaping the rewards because she's seen a fully rounded daughter at the end, of which she had her fears in the beginning. And that is a result of her being stable, present and calm. The wild daughter, the one she worries about, the nonconformist, will take her example and use it to temper her rashness and reactive nature. So what is within our control? What is within our control is how we behave, how we tap into our virtue every day, how we question and realign with the problems using our journals every day. Jo March is quoted as saying, "I'm always possessed to burst out with some particularly blunt speech or revolutionary sentiment before her. It's my doom and I can't help it." Again, another one of these wild characters, just like one of the children. She went into so much more detail, but I couldn't go into it online. Just like one of these children of the person who sent in a question to me, who's a little bit wild. And all you can do is create those boundaries, set your example, and stay true to that example, and do your best not to be too reactive to that wild behaviour, and understand that it needs to be tempered and it needs to be guided, but beyond that, it's out of your control. And that's what we have to take from this live today and this book and the Stoic principle of courage, because you have to be courageous as a mother. You have to be courageous to stand strong, to hold true, to not over-dictate, and have faith that your example will be followed. And if you do it well, it will be. Mrs. March said, If rank and money come with love and virtue, also I should accept them gratefully. But I know by experience how much genuine happiness can be had in a plain little house, where the daily bread is earned and some privations give sweetness to the few pleasures. What she's saying is, I understand certain things are outside of my control. I choose to focus on the things that are inside my control. And I understand if I can take action, small actions, just enough to keep us ticking over, that will give sweetness to the few pleasures that we have. So why do Stoics advise against expectation of what would look, how your family would look, how your relationships will look? Because if we're constantly looking to the future and what might happen, we are neglecting the opportunity to live right now. Children grow up very quickly. Things change all the time. Nothing is everlasting, behaviour-wise. If we have expectations, they are inevitably going to lead to frustration and anger. And we understand as Stoics that that is impacting our inner peace. Seneca says, again, the greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and wastes today. So if we're living in the future, if we are anticipating outcomes, we are missing out on what's happening now, and we will see things within relationships that we don't like. Relationships are transactional. We have to give whatever we can, and we understand that we need to be able to reap what we sow. We need to be able to take something back from that. But it's the sowing that comes first. And if we're living in expectation, we are not focusing on the sowing of our own seeds. So it is our job to be present, hold our virtues dear, and practice these daily, and our children will learn by example. This is the Stoic principle of courage. What I'm saying today is the key is knowledge of who we are, holding ourselves accountable to our knowledge, and understanding that life is transactional and we must invest so that we can sow in order to reap. I think they are my messages of the day.